start the class and object-oriented related concepts. So what it will contain, actually these are the different concepts. I will cover almost all of them, just to some extent. And go there. Some SCJP. This is actually this declarations, initializations, and scoping in different aspects. If you go to my website, if you see the step-by-step courses on Java, then here section 1, I think these are the most concepts here. Next slide, interface. I think there are 3 different stuffs here. The class declaration style. It's pretty simple. We already know these things. So class declaration, you can see you have to use the word class, and before that you could use public or private and the class name. The thing is you have to start with capital letter. Okay, and if it is a public class, then the file name should be the name of the class. Class name and file name should be same if it is a public class. Okay. If it is a private class, it can be different. Okay. And if there are different classes in the same file, when you compile, they will have different class separate files, not the same file. It will be different class files. Okay. If your program is myclass.java, then you will see after compilation myclass.class. Okay. And if you have another class here like private class xyz, then you will see another file xyz.class after compilation. Maybe you know the concept, the compilation and running, I think so. Okay. So, and inheritance, I think I also showed you. You need to write the current class name and then extends. So what I think the class you are inheriting. In our case, dog inherits animal. Okay. And implements. Implements means we talked about the interface. Okay. Yeah. Right. We talked about the interface, and if the third party they want to use some of the functions of the interface, then what they have to do? Implement the interface. Okay. Just think I want to write my own application in class, but I want to implement the functionalities of the interface provided to me. So in that case, I have to recognize it by telling implements your interface. Implements the interface name. And extends, I'm just telling this is a subclass of another class. Okay. And there will have the fields, constructor and method declaration. Field, it's the variables that you're talking about. And method declarations, you know the method declarations. Just the normal functions. Another thing is when you implement interface, then you have to implement the functions of the interface also. I think this is the methods of this class. Also, it has to have method implementations of the interface. And what is constructor? You know it or not? No. Okay. constructor is just the another method. Okay, constructor is just a method, but only the difference is it will have the same name as the class. Okay, it's a method, it has the same name with the class name. And the thing is, in your application, when an object will come into existence at the beginning of the object, this method will be called. Okay, when you create a variable based on the object or based on the class, so this method will get called for the first time. So you see, bicycle plus, this is the constructor. Okay. So when you create a bicycle object, by default it will get called. And you see there are 3 parameters. It's not a must. You can keep a constructor without any parameter. And as you are familiar with the overloading concept, so you can have many different constructors. You can have different constructor, but they will all have the same name, like the class name. But in this case, I'm just telling that bicycle, no parameter. Though this may not work at this moment because these variables are undefined. Just okay, like this. So this is another constructor, this is one constructor, and they are just telling all the methods here. Okay. So when you define a class, I think you are defining the constructors first, and then you are defining all the variables here, and you have to define different functions. And another aspect is, for each of the variables you can define some get method and set method. Okay, through those methods you will be able to access these variables outside of this class or outside of this object. I think in Visual Basic, in the properties window, you see different properties. When you set the variables, I think they actually call the set method. When you change the variable, it just calls the set method and changes the object variable value. Okay, but by default the value it displays by calling the get method, it calls those. Okay, what happens when you in Eclipse you define these variables, and if you right click, then this is not a Java file. If it is a Java file, after define the variables, if you right click you will see a source menu here, and then you will see some get and set, and then it will automatically create those get and set methods. We can try to create a simple class here, new, so A, X, XYZ, these are not good variable names. Okay. In really developed software, you have to avoid this kind of variable naming. You have to keep some meaningful name. Okay. If it were a bicycle, number of brakes or number of wheels or those kind of stuff, just some meaningful stuffs. Okay. And if you right click source and you see generating getters and setters. Okay. So it is doing getX and setX. Okay. And this is just the class, but if you want to create an object, or if you want to do some actions on it, so you have to create an object based on this class. How you do that? Maybe the concept is A, you define the variable equals to new, again class name. Okay. So I think you understand the reference type variable and the primitive type variable, or I need to show you? I think primitive variable just normal data type, just simple integer and float and those kind of stuffs, and these are reference, it just points to some stuffs, some address type of variable. Okay. things like get keys, set cadence, set gear, apply brake. Everything is part of this, but it also depends on the access modifier you use, as these are public, so these are also part of this. Here we have used public variables, but practically you should use private. Variables should be private. That's the better design. I think you know the constructor now, and as I told, okay, I think I missed one thing. So this is the constructor. If you say system.out.println test, okay, at this moment you are creating an object. When you create the object, instantly this method will get called and it will output test. So if we want, maybe what we can do, we can actually define the object same class, but you can definitely do it in the from other classes. Okay, we did not print it anywhere else, we just created the object, so it is printing test. That means it is calling it here. Or you can also use the debug. Debug, you have to see the flow. These are some rules what a class needs to have. You can use public, private. I think static. I think static you can use. An initial letter capitalized by default. If you inherit, you have to use the extend the superclass name. This is not told. And interfaces, if you implement some methods of the interfaces, then you have to use implement some interface name. And one thing is, you can extend only one class, okay, but you can implement many interfaces, okay. So in Java they support inheriting one class, but in C++ you can inherit many classes. You could say extends ABC, or ABC are 3 different classes, but in Java it's just only one class that you can inherit, but you can implement many different interfaces. And here is some common sense. You know that class body needs to be surrounded by brackets and all the variables are inside, on the methods inside. There is nothing critical here. I think the summary of this information you will find here. Okay. I think I went through the materials and the key points that needs to be remembered. I just put those informations here. Okay. You start with something. And the class name initial, and the same thing, list of interfaces, and if you want to member variable declare another class, so it has to have 3 components. First, the modifiers, public or private for the variable, and the type, and then these are common as you already know it. Okay. Okay, what we have in the second just touch briefly because we already know these things. Member values, as I just told, access modifiers, you can use public, private, and another is protected. Another is you can omit or you just ignore it. You did not keep public or private or protected, nothing. If you just don't mention it, it is called package private. Okay, package private, it means package, you know package. I think a set of classes, the package. Yeah. Private. Private, what is private? Private is just accessible within that group, not outside. So if you omit a variable name or function name without any modifier, then it will be accessible within all the classes in that package, not outside. Okay. And variable type, I just told primitive and reference, there is nothing. Variable name convention, just the usual, I think we have talked about it. I think what we do, we start with lowercase letter, and for each of the subsequent letter, you capitalize it. And for number of vehicles, the convention is like this. Okay, you start with lowercase and capitalize each of them. There is nothing fancy concept here and here. Method declaration, you know it, you can define a modifier, and it also applies like the previous public, private, static, and the you can just keep it like this. That means package private. Okay, and there will be parameters and method declaration, what it has to have. Just you can read it once. I can send you all the files. So there is nothing much, you already know. And this is just one of the example of the overloading. Okay, different function name, but parameters are different. So when the caller will call, based on the number of parameter he supplies, the right method will work. If he supplies 2 parameters, then this method will work. If he supplies 1 parameter and that's a double, then this will work. And one important note is, I think in Java, based on the return type, the overloading does not depend on the return type. It just depends on the number of parameters. Number of parameters, type of the parameters. Let here is number 1 parameter, but the data types are different. So it is legal in Java. Okay, but if it were something like integer, like this, parameters 1 and same type, but just the return type is different. In C++, they also define it as a overloading. Okay, but in Java, they don't recognize it as a overloading. You just need to remember this. Here from a method, when you return, I think for primitive data types you can return the variable directly. Okay, and if you return a class, and you have if you define a method like this, public what we are trying to say, this is the draw method, it is returning a rectangle. A rectangle is a class. Okay, so from here, when you will use return, for example, a variable r of r, but it has to be an explicit rectangle type or a subclass of rectangle, someone that inherits or extends rectangle, not the parent of rectangle. Okay. Just the thing, the return object must be either a subclass or the exact class of the return type. So it can be a rectangle, or it can be, what I can say, it can be a field rectangle if it is something like that. Field rectangle extends rectangle. Then R can be rectangle type, or R can also be field rectangle type. Okay. I think this is just one of the matrix based on the so what we are trying to say here, if something is declared public, it is accessible within that class, it is accessible within that package. Anyone in the package can use that variable or method. Subclass, I'm just telling if anyone extends this class, I'm just telling if dog extends B, then from the B the public method will, dog extends animal. In that case, all the public stuffs in animal will also be accessible from dog. That is the subclass concept. And to the world, the fourth column is representing the world. Outside this package or outside this class, are they accessible or not? Okay. So protected, you can see within the class, yes. Within the package, yes. In the subclass, yes. To the world, no. Okay. If you declare something protected, it will be accessible outside of the package or outside of the class. If you don't put any modifier within the class, yes. Within the package, yes. Within the package, no. Okay, I think I told wrong previously. And within the subclass, within the world, no. Okay, I think protected. Okay, that's fine. No modifier, I told package private. So in the package, they are accessible, but in the subclass, they are not accessible. Okay, I told right. But for the protected, in the subclass, you can also access protected members. I think this is the difference between there is no modifier and this is the protected modifier. Protected is accessible in the subclass, and if there is no modifier, it is not accessible in the subclass. And in the private, it is just accessible within the class, not in the package, not in the subclass, not in the outside world. I think you don't need to understand this. Okay, instance and class members. Instance is nothing. Here OB is an instance of class A, so OB is an object. And when an object is created, what does it mean? It occupies some memory space in memory space. Okay, inside that memory space, for all of the variables, it also creates some other spaces to keep the variables and their values. So you got the concept? Yeah. Just the total object, and then inside all of the variables, variable to keep their values. Okay. So and at that time we are telling them instance variable or instance method. Okay. And there is a difference between instance method, instance variable, and static method, static variable. Like if I would be saying static draw, okay, or static integer pi equals to 3 point, okay, just say like this. Okay, static, it is associated with the class. Okay, it's not associated with the object. The thing is, if you create 10 different objects, so there will be 10 different places. Okay, and you will have 10 different x. In 10 different object spaces, you will have 10 different x, but you will have only one pi. Okay, you will have only one pi variable. It just associated with the class, and to access this pi, you have to use something like this. I think from outside world, I'm just getting a dot pi. Okay, so it is private. If I was telling that, just for example, if it is public, then I could be using something like this: object instance dot variable. What does it indicate? It indicates that particular object address space and the I inside them. Okay, but a dot pi, from whatever place you access, it will be the same pi. Okay, it is the only one. If you change it in one place, it will be changed for everyone using it. But if you change it in one object, all other objects will be unaffected. Okay. If there are 10 objects, if you change the I object in one object, I variable in one object, it will not affect the other objects. But if from one place you change the value of pi, it will get affected everywhere. Okay. Another thing is, you can also use this. You can access it, but still it has the only one place. It's not that it's in 10 different places. It's just only one place. And practically how static will help, I think you can keep some constant kind of stuffs or some explicit method that does not depend on something. Okay, some common stuffs, you can keep it here. Another thing, initializing blocks. In class, we are just telling that there are some variables, methods, also there are some constructors. Constructors are being called when the object is created. Okay, but there can have some other initialization blocks that will also be called in the beginning. Okay, they don't have any method name, they will be just inside the class. You can just put bracket and put everything there. And just like this. Okay. I think in class, what you could do, okay, if you could wanted to assign some variables, x equals to 2, it's legally okay. If you put it here, x equals to 20. So when they are in multiple places, the first step will get executed first, second step will get executed second. In this way that they will work. And you can also use static. Okay, if you use static initialization, maybe you can okay, I think they are telling using the static method, you can use that block afterwards. Just take a look here. class. Nested class when you define one class inside another class. Okay, inheritance is different. One class is extending another class or sharing the properties or methods, but nested class is one class is containing another class. In practical life, if you see that, I think what you can say, in the car example, if you want to define the engine object, okay, if you see the combustion chamber, it is only part of the car engine, okay, and only part of the engine, and if we assume that no other object will be using that combustion chamber object, then we could define combustion chamber object inside the engine object. The concept is when you will see that two objects are very closely related and some of the objects are not required to be used outside of the scope, then in that case you can define one object inside another just to keep everything grouped in the same place. Okay, just it also applies to the, I think, the concept tight encapsulation. Just we are keeping the stuff that needs to be hidden. It's better for better manageability of the software, and also the cohesiveness, it also applies to that. So that's where the nested class comes. You can see what are the advantages. If you just read it, you will know. And we also have told what are the nested class and how it can be defined. And another thing is nested class can have two different types. One is the static nested class and another is non-static. When it's static nested class, you define static. When it's non-static, then you define just you don't put anything. Okay, and you can put private, public, that you can put, but if you don't put anything, then it becomes that is private as usual. Okay, and for static, if you want to use static class from outside of this, you have to use something. And this outer class, it is not static, so you have to create that outer class. And for static class, we just access it directly, as I showed previously here. I think static stuffs, you can just keep the class name and then call the static variable or static function. It is similar here. You don't need to instantiate the class. Okay, you don't need to instantiate the static class. Okay, but if it were a non-static nested class, we call it inner class. Okay, we are instantiating or creating the object, but here we are not creating the object. We are creating the outer object, but we are not creating this object. Here we are telling that at some point we will be creating outer object. Make outer object equals to new outer class. Okay, first we create the outer class, and based on that outer object we create the inner class. Now in practically, I think, do you need to use it or not, it will depend. As I told, as the advantage of nested class, if you want to group stuffs together and it does not need to be used from outside. Concept is the main thing that we covered, and the syntax you can just take a look. Okay, I think here just an inner class example. There is nothing actually. Private class, just outside data structure, and the inner class, inner event iterator, just the declaration, and it is just using it. also need to understand the scope, from where you can access the inner classes, inner nested classes, and from where you can access the non-static nested classes. Okay, I think it's better that they will have some chart here. Okay, I can find out later. Okay, and this is one of the thing. Enum, you can define your own data type. Okay, you are telling day is a data type, and these are the possible values of day. As you tell that integer is a data type, and 1, 2, 3, these are the values of integer data type. The way, by using the enum, you are telling day is the data type and these are the values. Actually what happens, enum, it actually creates a class in the back. Okay, and you can have some methods. You can have some methods here. Okay, those will be this day classes methods, and you can also associate methods with particular value. You can write a method here. Okay, and in this example what we are telling, we are checking the value of day. If it is Monday, they are doing this. It is Friday, they are doing this. I think the main concept is you can define your own data type. It is sometimes essential in your programming. Okay, sometimes you may need to define the day of the week. Okay, you want to display something by day of the week, a report just by day of the week. In that case, it's better that if you have a direct day class that are just this kind of values. So I think practically you will need to use enum. You can forget about the others. The main concept is that we are just showing the interface. That interface, it just have the method declarations. Okay, and you could use the modifiers like public. By default it's public, and these are implementing this interface. So when it is implementing, it is actually, it will implement all the classes, all the methods here. Change lens, signal turn. Okay, this is the interface. And another thing is, there is a concept called programming to the interface principle. Programming to the interface principle, what it tells, I think we're waiting for something.
It's quiet now. Now it's dead.
Yeah. Okay. Just telling that programming to the interface principle for the return types and those kind of stuffs, instead of using a class name, you can use a interface name. Okay, so in that case, any class that is implementing that interface, you will be able to return from that specific method. In a method, you have used an interface name as a return type. Okay, so from within that method, you will be able to return any object or class that implements that interface. Okay, you are providing more flexibility into that class, into that method. Okay, so you are not restricting the method in its functionalities. So that is called, I think, programming to the interface principle. I think it is recommended. Okay, and as usual, you know the interface concept, and you will see practically when to use it and how to use it. Just implementing those functions. Those are the main things. There is nothing. Okay, abstract classes and interfaces. just the template of the object or class. For each methods you declare it abstract. Okay, and the classes that will be based on the abstract, they must have to implement this method. In the abstract method, so in the abstract class you don't have to implement, but whoever implements abstract classes, they have to. And another thing is, you cannot create an object based on the abstract class. I think, for example, if A were abstract class, then we would not be able to write any statement like this. We would not be able to create any object. And when to use, as you have told previously, just to create some templates, then you can use. So I think those are the main concepts here. And for some specific rules, what is right, what is wrong in terms of abstract class and in terms of nested classes, I think you can just check it. Right. What about interface? We are just telling interface is a reference type similar to a class. Interface can contain only constants, method signatures, and nested types. No method is implemented. We don't write any code for any method. Interface cannot be instantiated. I think like the abstract class, we cannot create any object based on the abstract class, and for also interfaces, we cannot create an object based on the interface, but we can implement interfaces. They can only be implemented by classes or extended by other interfaces. So what happens, based on a basic interface, you can create another interface, just extending, just the way one class is extending the another class, one interface can also extend another interface. Interfaces are not part of the class hierarchy. In the package structure, this does not apply. A class can implement multiple interfaces that we have told previously. And if you see, for abstract class, it has to be declared with abstract keyword. Okay, and it is telling that it may or may not include abstract methods. It's not a must that you must have to have an abstract method. It can have, it may not have. But when you are defining abstract classes, then practically it will have. Okay, because that's the purpose. Abstract cannot be instantiated. We cannot create object. We cannot create inherit abstract classes. That means we cannot subclass, we cannot extend. And another thing, if a class contains abstract method, then it has to be declared as an abstract class. We are telling that an abstract class does not have to have abstract methods, but if it has abstract methods, it has to be declared as an abstract class. Okay. Abstract methods are declared without implementation. And the subclass of an abstract class must provide implementations of all the abstract methods. If you just implement one of the abstract method, it will not work. You have to implement all the methods. I'm just telling, if animal is an abstract class, there are 5 abstract methods, and if you create a class like class animal extends, so a class animal implements animal interface, or class dog implements animal interface, animal abstract class, it has to implement all the 5 methods. If it just implements 4 methods and leaves one, it will be an error.
In that class?
Yeah. In the class that is implementing abstract class, you have to implement all the abstract methods as defined in the abstract class. If you just leave 1 or 2, you will get some compiled error. Abstract class can have static and final fields and methods. Did he talk about final? No, maybe.
Final?
Yeah. No, I didn't talk about final. No. I think the way you define public, private, protected, I think final is the function name or before the variable name. Okay, when you put the like something final integer pi equals to final float pi equals to 3.141, then the variable value can never be changed. It means it's the final thing. Okay, when you say a method is final, at final draw, then you give some parameters. So this final draw method, it cannot be overridden. Some other subclass are not allowed to rewrite the class. So it's the final method, it is the final variable. You cannot change it. Okay. We are telling if an abstract class contains only abstract method declarations with no implementations, it should be better be declared as an interface. I think one thing is here, interface, it should not contain any implementation, but abstract class, it can contain implementation. And I think practically you can also write, I think when you will really work if you define abstract class, I think sometimes you will write the implementations in the abstract classes also, like for speak and turn left, turn right. If they are very generic and if they apply to all of the objects, all of the different type of objects, you can better also implement them in the abstract class. Then you don't have to rewrite those things. Okay, that way abstract class you are giving the prototype, but we are telling if abstract, in the abstract class we do not implement any of the methods, abstract methods, then it can be better be defined some interface, just the method declarations. It's a good design to declare a common abstract class with common methods with implementations. So it's a good point, I think, when you write program maybe you can remember. So another thing is an abstract class can implement an interface but are not bound to implement all the interface methods. Then previously we told that if a class implements abstract class, it has to implement all the abstract methods. But here we are telling if an abstract class implement an interface, it is not required to implement all the interface methods. Okay. I think it gets confused. Maybe when you work, then you have to keep this note on your side so that you don't mess up. Nested classes we saw creating objects, we know how to do it using the keyword super. Okay, super, it indicates the parent class. Okay, if you call that class animal and class dog extends animal, from the dog you can refer to the parent class using the super. Okay, right. As you talked about the constructor, I'm just telling parent class is the super class and the child is the subclass. In animal and dog, who is the child and who is the parent? Okay, I'm just telling if dog extends animal, who is the parent and who is the child? I'm asking you. Animal should be the parent, okay? Dog should be the child. So animal is the super and dog is the subclass. Okay, from dog or from the subclass, if you want to refer to anything of the superclass, then you can use the super dot method name, super dot variable name. You can call it like this. And one thing is, in the subclass constructor, if you just call super and the bracket, first brackets, then it will call the constructor of the parent class. Okay, if you define a subclass and if you want that the constructor of the subclass should execute the constructor of the parent class, you can just write super in the subclasses constructor, and it has to be the first statement. In the subclasses constructor, if you want to execute the parent classes constructor, you have to use the super method, and it has to be the first statement in the subclasses constructor. Okay. And another thing is, when one class extends another class, the parent class must have to have a constructor, otherwise it will be an error. When you define a class, it does not have to have a constructor written. Okay, when it is just a class. But when based on that class, if you create another subclass, in that case, in the first class, you have to define a constructor. That's a must. Otherwise, you will get an error. Just this rules will help, and you can read it here. Okay, we are calling the super class method print method. I think it is extending super class using the super keyword. We are calling this method, and if we had a constructor here, say here subclass constructor, in our bike example, bicycle and mountain bike extends bike. Just by calling super, what we are doing, we are calling the basic bike classes constructor, and it has to be in the beginning. If you put this line before super, it will be compiled an error. Okay. And providing constructor for your class, you just read. I think we covered the basic stuffs. Returning value from a method, we just told you can return, I think, primitive data type directly. For returning class, you have to return the explicitly class or subclass of the return type class. But if the return type was an interface, you could return any class or object that implemented that interface. That you have to keep in mind. And if you read this, you will get some related or a little bit more information. Defining methods, overloading, we know how to do that. Overriding and hiding methods. Sorry. Okay. The overriding is kind of hiding methods because we are redeclaring the method, and we also saw the related concept shadowing. Overriding applies to the methods and shadowing applies to the variables. Okay. Passing information to a method or constructor, just parameter passing. We talked about the pass by value or pass by reference. By default, Java passes stubs by value. Even the objects are passed by value, but as it is, as the address is passed, the effect is passed by reference. But it's not really passed by reference, but the nature is passed by reference. Instance and class members, we talked about this. Instance variable, the object is the instance variable. Instance and the, I think, class variables are the instance variables. Declaring number variables, I think using the different access modifiers that we know. Variables we know. I think that's okay. Now we trust it. Arrays we covered in the first class. Primitive data types. It's the different integer, float, those kind of stuffs, and the corresponding reference data type is integer. Then int, this is the primitive data type, and integer is starting with capital I, that's the reference data type for int. Okay. We saw this implementing interface, defining an interface. Package, we know how to the concept of package and import statement. Okay. Static imports. What does it mean? Static import, I think in import we are accessing on the classes, but if it is a static import, it will import only the static methods. What can happen later? You can define a class. Let for mathematical functions, you are defining a class and you are defining many static members to define different mathematical constants. Okay, just like pi. I think I'm not in touch with math for a long time. think there will be pi, gamma, alpha, whatever you say. Maybe you can define a class with 10 different static variable. Those are the constants for mathematics stuffs. So in another class, what you can do, you can just import all the static members of that class or of that package. In that case, only the static will get imported. Okay, but all other classes, those will not get imported. Okay. So you can see the syntax here. You see, static. This is the only difference. In our example, what we did, I think we used something import net.justtc.class name. But if we used static, then only the static variables and static methods of that class will be accessible from here. Okay, just see it like this. Creating and using packages. I think in practical field you will be using packages a lot. Okay, right. What you will be doing if you do a library management software, all the concepts that are related to books, all the classes, you will keep them in one folder. Everything related to library assistant, you will keep them in one folder, all the classes. Right. For if you think about a online practice exam software or online certification software, what we will do, all the practice exam related classes, we keep them there. And if you sell different products, different practice exam products or different training modules, what you will be doing, all the classes that defines the products, you will be keeping them in one package. Okay, just grouping similar classes or similar concept related classes into same places. Okay. I think if you don't use package, I think things will get very messy. Okay, so it's better that you initially identify all the different concept and you define the package and you define all the classes there. In types, interfaces, I think we covered all of them, but you can just click on the links and just read the page. So it will make sense. So you know it. I think class declaration, you can just read it. Okay, I think this is mostly, it covers most of the stuffs here. So what else? How far did we go here? 13. Okay, what is in 14? Okay, it's file operations. Okay, maybe we can take 5 minutes break or 10 minutes break.
What time is it?
7:10.
We have to go at 7:30.
You know, at 7:30.
Yeah.
So we can take 5 minutes break.
No, I can go until 7:30 right now. I'm good till 7:30 right now.
Okay, maybe I need to organize
Okay.
what I will tell.
Do you drink the water?
Sure.